So the next step is also to be able to add components quite easily. And let's just talk about some of the methods that we have for doing that. So starting off on points. Now obviously the first thing about a point, there's not much you can do in the way of, for example, just refining it. But what we can do is we can actually duplicate it. So if we duplicate a point, what happens is it simply adds an edge around it and puts it in the middle, allowing you to, for example, extrude it. Now if we go into the actual extrude op, basically what it does is it applies an extrude operator and then a move component above that, rather than integrating it right over the length, for example, right here. And what you'll find is that it applies a skirting ratio, which controls how far away from the point these new edges will be. And you can apply then subdivisions and all that sort of thing. So now the basic difference between just, for example, duplicating a point and pulling it out is that if you just duplicate a point and pull it out, it has the separate duplication and then the move components separately. If I just extrude a point, you'll see that it pulls it out, but it doesn't actually put a move component above it in the history stack. Okay, so I can then move this up and down, do exactly as I had skirting ratio, maybe create some transforms on it, put some subdivisions in it, so I can have something, flying around the place, whatever you would expect. The important thing is that you have the ability to control this and, of course, animate this later on. Now, as far as points go, that's pretty much it for creating more point geometry. Obviously, what we can do is just add another point to an existing edge or polygon. So what we just do is go to Polymesh, add vertex tool. It's also the insert key. So what I can do is it will snap to an edge, and it will just allow me to position points in there. And if I see, there we go, we can see those in there. Now that may or may not be useful, but in certain cases, whoops, dissolved a little bit too much there. In certain cases, it may actually be quite helpful to be able to remove those out. Now, okay, let's say, for example, I deleted, let's work on a little bit of edges. Now let's we deleted that edge. I'd like to add an edge. So we have the add edge tool, which defaults to backslash, which has a useful function that it snaps automatically to vertexes or to edges. You can also, by holding down the shift key or the control key, you can snap to with your snapping tools, but holding on the shift, it will automatically rotate to given angles and, for example, perpendicular settings there. So it's very easy to snap to the components and to the angles that you're going to be wanting to. So let's just delete these guys out here, just perform clean, and I'll also just delete this one out here. So one more thing that I can do, I can obviously just snap from point to point, and I can also, if I'm working with edges, subdivide them. So similar to adding an edge, what it basically does is it adds an edge across them. And I have two different ways. If I just right-click in my context-sensitive menu, you'll see that I have split edge with split control and subdivide edges evenly. And pretty much it's the same thing, just one has a controller to say at what percentage the split's going to happen. So we'll just say 50%. And you can see that I can connect a parallel edge loop. That's actually here, it's not going to do much. Or I can say it to connect or not. So it either just adds points or it actually draws in new edges. What I can do is if I want to use that parallel edge loop, for example, just select maybe two of these here, and we'll just do that again. Split edges, maybe this time evenly, so right in the middle, and we'll say we want a couple subdivisions this time. And you see that's one of the differences between the subdivide edge operation and the split control, is that here you have say how many subdivisions, the other one you just say where it should be. And I'll select parallel edge loop, and you see that it then automatically goes through an edge loop and adds them all along, which can be quite useful. Of course, much like the point, we can also extrude an edge or duplicate an edge and pull it out. Again, it's the same differentiation, is that here I have an extrude operator followed by a move component, whereas in the other one I would just have a just the extrude operator. Let's just freeze off my modeling stack. It's getting a little bit confusing here. Okay, so what I'll do is now I'll just do, for example, an extrude along axis. There we go. And you can see that now I just have the extrude operation in the history stack. There we go. Okay. let's just get rid of that one there. Alright, now in terms of polygons, again, the same thing. What I can do is I can go in, I can add a polygon. For example, if I've now deleted several polygons, we'll just go in there and delete these guys. And now I wish to actually manually add one. I can add new polygon. Again, it will snap to edges and points so that I can draw these. Maybe actually undo that. And you can see, by the way, down at the bottom, you'll find exactly what your tool can do with every mouse button. Don't forget to keep an eye on that, because that will tell you some quite useful information. So it'll automatically snap there, and then you can see that it automatically also goes or takes as a starting point the edge over which you hover. So if I hover to this edge here, I can also maybe say start new polygon. That's just middle mouse button, and it'll now get that one and there. So there we are, and now we have it into the right mouse button. There we go. Or undoing maybe that last bit. Maybe I've created that all as one polygon. Now I just want to right click. I'm still in the tool, so now I can start a new polygon like this. Let's grab that one there, and maybe now I want to right click again and create a new polygon here. And again, there it goes. And it'll automatically make sure that your polygon faces the right direction. If it can't, for some reason, it'll ask you what it's supposed to do. Should it have double edges, or should it invert the other polygons, or what exactly should happen? So you'll have quite a bit of possibilities of working with it quite fast. Now, okay, in terms of polygons, the other thing that we can do, of course, is we can just subdivide a polygon in the same way that we can subdivide edges. Now, if we just get our subdivide polygons, we have several different methods of doing that. We can just take a plus or a diamond, or maybe an X. Now, what we also have is this tile operator. Now, if we pull this up to 2 or 3, what it'll do is it'll tile those X's, and it'll do a plus first, and then for everyone after, it'll do an X again. Yeah. So, or sorry, it'll do plus in everyone until the last one. Now, if I tile it, we'll see what happens. Is what it does is it does an X first. This is the first operation. Then it tries to continue on with X's inside somehow. So, if I have tile on, it does your plus operations for everyone but the last one. Okay, so zooming in here a little bit, you see that there's a plus first, and then it X's everyone. If I'm in 3, it does a plus first, and then a plus there, and then X's everyone. Same way if I'm in diamond. Yeah, it'll do a plus first, and then a plus first, and then a diamond. If you don't have tile on, what it'll do is it'll try and diamondize the whole thing for every step. Right, now we have our other polygon tools. Let's just go on and continue in on our list. So we have the next one would be your extrude. Again, we can either just duplicate a polygon with just Control D and move it out. If we look in here, you'll see again extrude operate followed by the move component. Let's go back in there. Or what I can just do is grab my extrude operation and just extrude along axis and control it with the length here. There we go. And again, adding subdivisions and maybe like a rotation in X or Y. Again, remember that this can all be animated, so you can actually do some fairly cool animation controls right in here in the modeling operations already. Okay, so let's get rid of that. I didn't particularly like that. There we go. Okay. Now, next we also have several abilities to like inset polygons and now offset. So basically what I'll do is I'll just actually subdivide this fellow here. Just add another edge, and we'll just recreate this nice little split that we had in the middle, just adding an edge briefly. Okay, so one of the problems is if I have a polygon sort of thing that looks like this, and now I wish to maybe scale that in. If I just duplicate that and scale it, what you'll find is that I can actually do it like that. I can either scale it sort of like this, in which case you get overlapping polygons and all that sort of nonsense, or even locally, and it's not really going to work. Even if I grab both axes here, which I didn't just do, there we go, you'll see that you still get the overlapping polygons. So what I need is an operation that allows you to take those polygons and move them from every edge in accordingly. So if I just go to my inset polygons, what that does is it basically takes the edges and moves them internally, but it also includes an extrude operation. So it's basically just drawing this inset, which you find in every extrude. There we go. So, and all you get in your history stack is an extrude operation. Again, this is animatable. You can also lock it to a specific angle if you'd want that. Okay, the offset is exactly the opposite, basically allowing you to Let's grab these guys here. Okay, grab the polygon, push them out a certain distance from their edges. So we just push them out. So it's like an inverse, but it's actually not adding new geometry in this case. The offset, unlike the inset, does not add new geometry. Okay. So that's all that I'm going to talk about in this group is basically the extrusion that we were talking about, but we can also use a curve to control that. So basically we just grab in here, maybe draw a little curve that does something like this. We can also move it to wherever we want to. And what we'll do is we'll just select these polygons, select, extrude along curve, grab our curve, and it will now use that curve to define the extrusion. We can sort of make this a little bit higher subdivision, maybe put an inset on it a little bit so that it's a little bit smaller, or we could actually even scale it down a bit to create sort of a nice point. But the important thing about this particular method of extrusion is that the curve remains attached. So again, you could put a shape animation on the curve or use your relational modeling to modify the curve after you've already done the initial extrusion, so to make it sure it fits and everything like that. It's a quite comfortable way of creating geometry along that. And again, whether that's a point or it's an edge or a polygon, the extrusion can be used with a curve.